My Kelly dolls were in serious need of reorganization. Over the years I've tried different things, but it's been difficult because they are so tiny and prone to jostling around in containers. And my system I had come up with some time ago, it was working, but it wasn't perfect. And then what really prompted me to make this video and reorganize my dolls was that over the summer and like the fall, there was a seller at our flea market who had, I don't know where she got them, but like she had thousands of boxed dolls, and hundreds of them had to have been Kelly dolls, and they were a great deal. It was like 5 dolls for $20. So every time we saw her, we would spend $40 on boxed Kelly dolls. So my Kelly collection has grown by like 50 dolls, like probably a little bit more than 50 this year alone, which very rarely happens. Like I don't find Kelly dolls too often anymore. So they were just, it exacerbated the problem that was already there. So I kind of came up with an idea that I wasn't sure if it would work, but that way I could keep them in the container they were in, but like subdivide it better in a more permanent way that like wouldn't start to come undone with the weight of the dolls. So I hope you enjoy, and I also have some like bonus footage of some other dolls that got reorganized because of the Kelly project. It led to me reorganizing a few other things because I am a very if you give a mouse a cookie kind of person when it comes to doing projects. So without further ado, let's get on with the video. This is the present state of my Kelly dolls. You can see that the side with Kelly's friends is overflowing. These are just Kelly herself. And in the middle here we have my Chelsea dolls and the potpourri I keep in here to keep them smelling nice. I might be moving the Chelsea dolls, we'll see. And it's not that there isn't enough room for them in this container, it's that these little cardboard boxes that I put in here, like trays that I made, they're just not holding their shape anymore, and I need more like subdivision. So that's what we're going to try to do. Hi, Jankerman. And my plan is to use these drawer dividers from Amazon. I got them in a specific height. They're 6 inches high. So hopefully I'll be able to maximize like the height of this container. First order of business is going to be just to pull the trays themselves out. You can see like how warped they are. They're very much coming apart. And then I'll just put my Chelsea dolls on top of the container lid here. This potpourri actually still kind of has a scent, which is surprising. So, these are the dividers. So this is the button, I guess. Let me make sure this is gonna close. Oh yeah, that'll close. Alright, so they don't have like the world's best tension, which, I mean, I guess it makes sense, but they're not that heavy, so I feel like this should work. The problem with the cardboard is it bows out. It'll like move around, but it also bows out. So I'm hoping now this was a set of 5. I figured I wouldn't be able to fit all 5 in here, but it was just more economic to get the extra 2 because I could use them in the future. We have a helper. Quasimodo's here rubbing up against the box. I can't trust him with my dolls either because he likes to eat them. Alright, so I can fit 3 of the 5 in here. Now I am going to have to like tape them down, because if I try to get full pressure, because this is kind of flexible, it makes it so that the lid buckles up too much. whereas that's a pretty flush fit right now. And I did try one of my other containers that, this one you can see there's like, the lid comes up, there's like space so it's not flat when you close it, but this is a little bit smaller than this container, so I wouldn't be able to fit in the third divider. It's not perfect, but I feel like I have in the past made like actual just like dividers, not trays, out of cardboard, and that's how I originally started dividing my little dolls. And I could get smaller containers, but I want them all in one place. It takes up less room in the long run having them all together, and you know, when we need people. And I thought about buying foam board and cutting it up, but I was afraid I was gonna have to tape it down, so I have to tape this down anyways, which is kind of annoying. But this is like hard plastic. It's not going to deform or fall apart or anything. I just want to make sure I secure it good. I want to make sure that there's like enough headroom. Some of these dolls have pretty high ponytails, so you can see, and this little handle thing makes it jut in. So there's space for them all around. I don't want them being too snug of a fit, and I can't, these don't extend far enough either to go like the opposite way. It'll be a little awkward, but you know. Yeah, this one in the middle is the least stable because it's like the furthest away from the edges. So I feel like the plastic isn't as sturdy. It wasn't ideal to have to tape these, but it only took one piece of packing tape to get them really sturdy. And I tested this after I had the container filled up, and I basically tipped it almost completely vertical, because when we get them off of the top shelf, the dolls will kind of slide to one end, and they held up in place perfectly. So not ideal, but hey, it worked and I could use them. So it's not ideal. If I had known that these were going to be so loosey-goosey and I was going to have to tape them anyways, I would have just gone the cheaper route and used foam board. But I already bought these, and I can use the other two for actually in drawers. These should hold reasonably well. And there is like space on like these corners here for the Chelsea dolls if I wanted to fit them in. This is what I have to deal with. Are you being good or are you being naughty? So once I figured out the snafu with these dividers moving around and needing some tape to hold them in place, it was time to sort the Kelly dolls. Now I had 237 dolls in this container before. Yes, it's a lot, and I had growing room. But I was going to kick the Chelsea dolls out. I had 16 of them. So I had to divide the remaining number between 4 compartments, and the thing is, I wanted the compartments to make sense because I wanted them to almost be like their own little containers. So like if you're familiar with how I store my Barbies, for instance, I have them subdivided pretty thoroughly. Like my 90s Barbies, for instance, are pretty much separated in containers by year. So like my 1995 Barbies, for instance, all live in one container. And then her friends are in like separate containers and whatnot. It makes finding them easier. Obviously, if you have a smaller collection, this isn't necessary, but I have a lot of Kelly dolls, and I wanted to make sure that when we needed them for photos or videos, or we were checking inventory or doing maintenance, whatever the stuff we do with our dolls, I wanted to make sure that we could always find exactly where every doll was and keep her with any duplicated dolls. You can see that I do have like a lot of duplicated dolls in this category. Unfortunately, my 90s Kellys and my 2000s Kellys couldn't all fit in one of these compartments together. I mean, they could, but there wouldn't have been much growing room. So I had to split them up and then figure out which friends to fit in with them, and that was kind of a whole process. Now, over here I am combing out their hair and trying to put them in nicely, but at the end of the day, I knew that I was going to be, like, potentially boil washing and redoing some people's hair, and I was just trying to get a lay of the land, not make sure they were all perfect. I am trying to be gentle, but like I said, I was going to be potentially moving them around as I figured out how to organize. That tends to be why I don't film a lot of organizational videos, because I do it a lot, but there's a lot of back and forth and me changing my mind, so it's not that fun to watch. So we have 90s Kelly, 2000s Kelly. I can't put them all together because there would be like over 80 dolls and you know there wouldn't be any growing room. So I'm going to put Tommy in with the 90s dolls. And these are my Chelseas. They're just hanging out on this tray for now. They're not going to go in here. Alright, and to help me out, I'm going to divide the friends ahead of time. Some of them I haven't had as long, and some of Kelly's friends change races over the years, like Jenny, so it can be hard to remember like who's a Jenny and who's a Melody off the top of my head. So I'm going to pre-sort them. So for instance, this is a Jenny, but then some of my redheads are too. Okay, this over here. Kia, gonna have a big Melody stack. Big Deidre, Tamika, Nikki. I'm gonna put Ryan in with Tommy because there's only a few Ryans, and it will just be easier if we need boy dolls to have them all together. So they're going right in the container because I only have my Happy Family Ryans and an amusement park Ryan. So, and then another instance. So this is the newer version of Kayla. Whereas this is the old version of Kayla. This is exactly why I want to rearrange them, because when they're like only broken down in a couple categories, they get insanely messy. And so many of them have Kanekalon hair. Maria. This was a huge reason I wanted to organize them into bigger categories, like more categories I should say, because these dolls are so prone to having hygiene issues just because they're tiny and they have a lot of hair. My mom always used to joke around about how Kelly was so unrealistic because she had way too much hair for her tiny size, and it makes storing them kind of a nightmare. Also, fun fact, this is a Halloween party doll. She was sold in this outfit, but she was originally Liana, and then they repackaged her later as Chelsea. So, fascinating how that happens. Honestly, this video was kind of stressful to make because I was annoyed at myself for buying the drawer dividers, and I didn't think that they were going to work at first, which they did, and I'm really happy with my purchase now. But I was kind of panicking about that, and then I was looking at my dolls, and I get a lot of, like, I'm not exaggerating here, I get a lot of anxiety when it comes to my dolls not looking a certain way. I spend a lot of time cleaning them up and making them look nice and dressing them, and sometimes my sister throws them back in the container sloppily, not just with Kelly's, just in general. And it can't be helped with Kelly's because they move around a lot in this container, but I felt a lot of panic looking at them, like, oh my dolls. Alright, so now I'm going to put Melody in here. And side note, some of the really shabby dolls, like this one, are childhood ones. They were very loved, so played with by me and my sister. Ergo, why they're not super nice. Put 44 dolls roughly in each of these to split them evenly. So there will be about 20 less in each of these than in those. If I have to do some like redistributing, I will. This wasn't easy because you'd think, oh, you could organize Kelly's friends by how they look, but some of the Kelly dolls change what they look like, even like ethnicities. Like Jenny, for instance, is Asian in the early years, then a redhead, then sometimes Asian again.
So I basically broke my dolls down into categories of character, and then I tried to figure out like what way made the most sense. So the dolls I had more of, I put in the third compartment from the top, and then all the random people I put down below, and then you'll see I'll label it to make it easy for me in the future.
Alright, and then what I'm going to do to help me remember who is where, I'm going to put labels on like the tops of these dividers. So we'll do 90s Kelly and all boys.
It worked out really well that there was room on the top of these dividers for a label to fit. These are the labels I use for fashion bags, and it's really helpful.
And as I was putting them in, I'm not gonna like label everyone, that's why I went for bigger categories. So like this will be the miscellaneous.
And I just used a Sharpie, a fine point one, to write on these labels because they're not water soluble, so if like it gets a little bit humid or whatever in the basement, they won't bleed out. When I make the bigger labels that go on the outside of the container, I always use paint pens because they're not as like light fast. Sharpie will fade, but this will work fine for the inside. I also made little arrows pointing to each compartment on the label so it's easier to understand.
Miscellaneous friends. Guess it kind of works out that I have these. 2000s Kelly and nobody. 90s Kelly and all boys. And then I can just stick my potpourri in there. And we'll put it on. There we go. And you can see right through it. So I want to rescent the potpourri that was in this container. Normally I have like a already made bag ready to go. So I would take this out and then refill with new stuff, but I ran out of potpourri at some point and I forgot to make some. So obviously this comes scented. I get this at the dollar store because the stuff at Walmart is honestly really expensive, and you get a lot of pieces like this that are huge. So I'll buy it from the dollar store. I have 4 bags here. And then I have like these fragrance oils from Walmart. So I'll put lavender and rose in here. Lavender is good because it attracts bugs. They don't like the smell of that. And obviously, like, these are essential oils. I have to be careful with my pets, but I keep the potpourri sachets in my closed containers of dolls and also in their like clothing drawers. It just helps keep things smelling fresh. And I used to use dryer sheets, which, I mean, I've heard that, you know, dryer sheets, they have some fabric softener on them, that's not the best to have right on your dolls, but I did that for years, and I just put like a dryer sheet or two between each row of every like couple rows of dolls. But the scent didn't last as long, and you know, you couldn't really rescent them. So the nice thing is, as long as the potpourri is still like it hasn't gotten mildewy or anything, that happens like once in a great while, like some of this style, if it's really humid in the basement, even with the dehumidifier on, it'll get a little bit mildewy. So I check them. That only happens in like a couple of the clothing drawers that are located in the darkest part of the basement, and then in my containers with like really old dolls, they tend to, they're rubber, I don't know, it just tends to be a real magnet for stuff like that. But most of the time I can just reuse these. And that's great because it's like, ooh, not only does it the smell lasts longer, but you know, you don't have to keep rebuying the potpourri. And where did my spoon go? And then this is a spoon. I actually bought this at the dollar store in a set because I had accidentally melted some of my kitchen spoons that I had over 10 years. I had like a set of 3 and then I lost 2 of them over time. But I bought these at the dollar store, but they were so flimsy that when I would like stir pasta with them or something, the spoon would start to like deform, which obviously not good, so I just kept them for stuff like this. And I'm just gonna mix it around. And if you're wondering, the tray here, way back in the day, like, I don't know what it was, maybe like 8 years ago, like back in 2018 rather, I switched the type of glitter my cats were using to like the pellets that you sift. So I needed glitter boxes that had the trays. But I just used the sifter that came out of these because they came in like, I had 2, but they came with 2 trays. I don't know, it was weird. So these are actually old glitter trays, but they were never used. I just use them as transport bins for dolls, for soaking stuff, or in this case, for making potpourri. And I'm going to put this by my wood stove, like in the room with the wood stove downstairs, so it can like, the oil can dry out a little bit. Because obviously if you accidentally put it away with wet oil on it, it might get a little gross. So I'm going to do that. And now when I go through other containers and stuff, I can just make my, like, I'll have this ready to go so I don't have to like wait to make it and put it in the thing. And these are just like organza bags that I got off of Amazon with something else. I ordered like tiny ones of these because I used to try silica packets with my dolls, but it's way too humid here that it doesn't do anything, because people have suggested that to me before, and I spent like a lot of money on a lot of silica packets. And I would fill them in tiny ones of these and put them multiple in each container of dolls, and they literally changed color with moisture in like a day, even upstairs where it was less humid. And now I'm just going to go through each of my reorganized compartments and just check and see the dolls that I want to redo their hair. In an ideal world, they'd all look perfect, but when you store them in containers, even if you're really nice about it, especially with tiny dolls, they're going to get a little bit messy. So I'm just going to do like some of the ones that are particularly wild, or the ones that I have had for a long time, so my boil washing skills have improved. So that's what I'm going to do. And also some of them, like, their hats aren't really staying on that well, so I'm just going to put their hats away. See, with the Tommy dolls, their hair gets crazy, but there's a really easy way of, like, when I take them out for things, I just take some diluted gel and I smooth it over their hair. So obviously, like, when they come out for things, they get groomed, but I don't want to go through like the whole process of making them look perfect after a boil wash, only for them to get a little bit jostled. So that's what I'm going to do. We'll see how many I pull out.
Whenever I go through my dolls, I have the strong compulsion to want to clean them all and wash all their clothes. I have to fight against those compulsions because I know, like, they're not actually dirty, Shelly. You're just imagining things. So, like I said, I focused on the dolls that, you know, actually needed it, and I think I had less than 25, which, considering there was 200-ish dolls in this container, that's not bad for me. I could have been way worse. But I also had recently done some of these dolls anyways when I updated my Flickr guide photos of them, so they were already looking a little bit better from that.
So these are all the dolls that I want to wash. So This Becky doll, she actually needs her face washed. There's something on it. And then quite a few of them I've had a long time. Some of them I'm just gonna probably fix their bangs. The rest of their hair is fine. But yeah, not surprising. A few of them are my childhood dolls, like this Lorena and Deidre, and then some of them were older flea market acquisitions from like 2011 to 2013. So, and then everybody else I laid in really nicely. It's much easier flipping through them, so get to undressing.
And here I am undressing them. I have my Bratz case that I always store clothes in, and then I also have a little Ziploc that I keep in the Bratz case for tiny things like shoes and hair accessories, just to prevent anything from getting lost, and that way I know where everything is. I did keep a couple of them dressed because I was just doing their bangs, so they weren't getting the whole shebang. Now these dolls have all been cleaned before. I clean everything before I put it away. And some of them probably have had multiple baths over the years, so I'm only washing their hair once and conditioning it, and I'm not scrubbing their bodies or anything unless it's like this Becky where she actually had some stuff on her face. I'm not sure what it was from, but yeah, I reined it in. I didn't overdo it with the cleaning, which I was very tempted to do. Here is some footage of me boil washing them. The ones floating in the bowl have saran hair, so I always leave that to sit. They're so tiny that they can't really sit on the edge of the bowl unless they're like Becky and they have a lot of hair. And the rest of the dolls had Connect-Lawn, which most of the time Kelly does have Connect-Lawn, and it's really annoying and part of why they get so messy. I did have to heat up a second bowl at some point. I didn't film it, but I did heat up another bowl in the kettle for the last few dolls and to touch up some bangs. And then I just put them to air dry after, you can see my diluted gel bottle in the corner, after going ham with the diluted gel. And then I dressed them up the next day.
Alright, so I have decided to switch my potpourri sachet size. So I'm going to use these little pouches that I used to keep silica in. These are great for covering up my Bratz doll shoes in storage so the paint doesn't scuff around. But I have a bunch of them, so I'll just put one in each compartment.
So part of why I like the potpourri is because some dolls, as they're older, they're smellier, or if they're very rubbery like Ken's, they get stinky. And also because my dolls all are stored in the basement, it does get naturally a little bit musty down there. It's just the nature of things where I live and the humidity levels. So this just keeps it smelling nice, and I find that the potpourri lasts a lot longer than the dryer sheets. I feel like it's more eco-friendly because I can just rescent it. And I've had those same like oil bottles for years, and some of the potpourri too.
Alright, so this is very potent. I put a little too much oil in with that, but that's okay. So now the scent will be evenly divided, and the only thing I have to do is adjust my labels on the container. So it says Kelly, Chelsea, and Friends. Chelsea's no longer going to be in here, so I have to fix it on both sides because I always label my containers on both sides so that it doesn't matter which way I put them back on the shelf.
black cardstock. I got some of this at Michael's on sale and with a gift card a long time ago. And paint markers because, again, they won't fade if sunlight touches them. And I like the black and white contrast because it is dark in my basement, so it's easier to see this way. And then they all match, which isn't really important, but I don't know, I do like it. And I just tape it on with some packing tape.
So I have 2 of these dividers left over, and my plan is I have this miscellaneous little doll container that you can see is reaching the top, and most of them are Kidcore Katie. So I want to move them into a shallower container where I can put the dividers in. Yeah, there's going to be some like musical containers going on because I also have my Rainbow High container, which they're full. So I bought a 2-pack of these at Walmart today for this purpose. So I'm going to use one of those containers. Now I'm not sure if these will be a little bit too tall for that. So I brought up my Descendants container. This used to be for my 70s and 60s Barbies, but my Descendants are presently in it because it is tall enough for the dividers. So they're going to be moving around containers. I think that might be a little bit too tall. Okay, so this is a little bit too tall for here. But that's okay because I already tried these in here, so that'll work. I kind of forgot that these might be a little bit too short, but I knew that I had a container that would work. So I'm going to move my Descendants dolls into a new container. Let me get and they used to be in here for a long time, but they have since upgraded space. I'm gonna play a musical container. And these guys are kind of hard to keep neat because they all have like the nylon hair. And fun fact about my Descendants collection, every single one of these dolls I got secondhand. I did not buy a single one of them brand new at the store, and this doll, she was boxed, but I got her at a thrift store. And this Aisle Style Switch Mal was my very first. She was given to us by one of Colleen's coworkers. She belonged to one of their kids, and I still don't have her outfit, but I got that outfit off of eBay and a lot with Descendants hands. Because yes, I have a whole stash of Descendants hands that I got off of Mercari and eBay some years ago, which worked out because this girl who was really nice from Descendants 2, she was missing a hand when I got her at the flea market, so it was nice having one already. And I swear, I have like the weirdest luck with these boy dolls. I don't have that many, but I happen to get duplicates. I have 2 of these J's and 2 of these Bens. He's in the wrong outfit. Like, what luck is that? This is probably my favorite Descendants doll. Carlos. I think I'm going to put a few smaller sachets of potpourri in their container as well, because it is kind of shallow, so I have like tons of those little sachets, tons and tons of them. So even though they didn't work out for my initial plan, you know, they didn't go to waste. I think I'm going to put 4 of these in there. Alright, it took some figuring out how I wanted to do this, but this is the container that my descendants were in, because it's the deepest one that these 6-inch dividers fit in, and the reason why I got them tall was because the container my Kellys were in was pretty deep, so this is the only one I have that'll work, so it's a little bit shorter. So therefore, my original plan had been to sort everybody in this container. This is a lot of random people in it, like my mini Barbies, my mini celebrity dolls, the Madeline dolls, etc. So they're kind of just like random. And Katie was what was hogging most of the room in here, because this container was to the top and you can see there's lots of growing room. And none of these categories are honestly ones that grow exponentially quickly. Like, I'd say in here the two things that I'm most likely to like intentionally buy would be the mini Disney dolls, and a lot of those go on my display anyways. These are just my duplicates. And then my Dawn dolls, but I don't find them very often. So they're staying in here. This also fits nicely into a random space on the shelves. So then I brought up, this had all of these people and was getting pretty full. So I figured I would move my Chelsea dolls in here, and I already have the potpourri in, because this is like plenty of growing room, and this is like a really weird tub that my sister used to keep Molly's tea set in. So we have all of our Cakeware Katies, and there's plenty of growing room. And in the event that they ever were to like hit the top of this, they could move into a container that size themselves. I was able to fit them this way. I tried it the other way, but it didn't work out very well. That's why I needed someone tinier to fit in these slots. And I have a lot of these Heart Family and like Teacher Barbie kids, the ones that use the old Rosebud molds, and I gun for these dolls when I see them secondhand. And then these are all my other random toddlers, so my Cakeware Jodies, and then I have my Monster High children, and then some like random vintage people. So I added in 2 sachets of potpourri. Oh, and my Todd. Where is he? Out right there. You can kind of see his hat. That is my 1960s Todd, who I love, because there's some pretty stinky dolls in here, because these older ones, sometimes it almost looks like mildew that gets on them, but it's actually just their plasticizer leaching out, so they get pretty stinky. So I have 2 bags of the potpourri here, one here and one here, and then all that's left is this new container. I have to move my Rainbow High dolls in, and just move some labels around and adjust that. Alright, and I've transferred my Rainbow and Shadow High dolls. I'm going to get them some potpourri too. So the nice thing is that they have some growing room. I wanted to put them in the container that the Katie dolls are in now, because that one like bumps up from the top. But that's alright, because you know, by the time they're that plentiful, if I ever get that many, then they'll be just moving into like the size containers I keep my Barbies in. And I was able to transfer some of the labels over from container to container, so that's nice. Or if I could flip it around and there wasn't anything written on the reverse side, I could just use the back side of the labels. Put their lid on, and they're all set. So all of the dolls have officially been reorganized that needed to be. I hope you enjoyed watching me reorganize my Kelly dolls. If you guys enjoy this sort of like Dolly Diaries episode where it's focused on one project, I can definitely film more of them. If you're interested in seeing any of these dolls that you saw in this video up close and personal, I have photos of every doll in my collection and all the outfits and playsets on my Flickr. It's always linked down below. I still have Kelly dolls that I'm working on writing on, so they're not live yet on Flickr, but my album has grown a ton, so feel free to check that out if you want. And until next time, love your dolls, love yourself, and love your life.